sewer district. And I do want to apologize for any confusion from last week. So this is,
That's okay. Meetings got moved, it was just,
and it's a very important issue to the sewer district. But our number one problem, the way the ordinance is written, we firmly believe it's unconstitutional. Because all the grinder pumps in the parish are privately owned. And the Louisiana Constitution specifically says you cannot use public funds on private property. I mean, that's just 101 governmental law. It's the only thing that'll really get you in trouble using public funds on private property. So until all this can be fixed, we'd ask you that you suspend it, repeal it, set up a committee. We all met this morning, the attorney from the city of Them Springs, the sewer district, the city, a bunch of people, just to try to identify what the issues are, because there's a bunch of issues. And let me just give you a couple of examples of it. One, the old ones, who's going to make a determination as to what standard, what are going to be the standards, who's going to bring them up to the current standards.
Hold on. I'm going to make these notes.
And this was just a short look. It's going to take longer than an hour meeting or a day meeting. It's going to take a little while to get all these. But these are just some issues that we came up with on short notice.
Okay, so what is the standard? Who brings them up to standard?
And who's going to inspect them?
Okay.
You're going to have to obtain a servitude and a donation of the pump. Who's going to locate all these pumps, and then who's going to obtain the servitude, and who's going to obtain the donation of the actual pump. A lot of these pumps aren't located where you like them to be, out front. So some of these are going to be in the backyard, next to the pool, underneath the flower bed. You know, we're going to be able to get a servitude from that. Liability is an issue, Mr. Talbot. One, what happens if the line breaks, the house floods? But more importantly, what happens if a hurricane comes through and the power goes out? I mean, right now the sewer districts are required to rent these generators for the lift stations every time there's a national disaster. Just say we have 100,000 pump grinders out there, or 10, we don't know. And that's the problem. We try to identify what is the universe of the issue. Who's going to purchase the generators to run those? Who's going to go out there physically to each one of these locations and run these pumps during the time when power's out? I mean, like Lake Charles right now, you know, the flood of 16. I mean, we all know these things happen. And then at the very end, it's going to be the cost. Is that cost going to be borne by the individual who owns the grinder pump, or is it going to be spread out to all the customers? Scooter, I have a house next to yours, by example. You have a grinder pump, I don't. Do I have to pay for part of yours? Those are issues everybody needs to discuss and come to a resolution instead of just saying, hey, municipalities or the sewer districts are responsible. So we would just ask you to just suspend it, repeal it, set up a committee. We've got a bunch of volunteers that have offered to be on the committee. Enumerate what these issues are, and then how we can fix them, if that's the way everybody wants to go, and who's going to pay for it. And that's all we're really asking for. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Well, you know, we've talked about a lot of this stuff, Wayne. What is a standard? We don't care what the standard is. It's your sewer district. So you create the standard. I mean, basically, the thing that brought this to head was Serene Acres.
Right.
And Denham Springs obviously was satisfied with the design because they entered into an agreement with the developer.
That's not my battle, but I would defer to.
Oh, I'm not. But ultimately, it's probably a design problem that's causing the issues there because there's so much head pressure. The pumps are failing because of the distance it needs to travel. So the issue of design, for example, if I'm developing a subdivision and I put a lift station in, the parish defers to the sewer district on what the lift station looks like. I mean, basically the sewer district says, we want the lift station to look like this because we're going to operate it at a later date.
And obviously,
So in essence, the sewer district needs to come up with the standard. Just like, you know, who brings them up to standard? The sewer district accepted these grinder pumps in the system. They accepted design. They let somebody tie that line into their lift station, into their gravity line, something. They accepted it at the time. So consequently, they accepted the standard. So if the pumps have not been maintained to standard, they need to bring it up at this point in time, because the same people that have been paying the sewer fee to the sewer district or the city or whoever, you know, they've been paying the same fee that the guy who ties into the lift station, and guess who's been maintaining the lift station? The sewer district. But nobody's been maintaining the grinder pumps except for the homeowner. So consequently, they've been paying the same thing as the guy who lives next door who drains into a lift station without the same benefit. Who's gonna inspect them? Typically, the sewer district, when they take a sewer system into the place, they've inspected it, so it will become the responsibility of the sewer district. So far as servitude and donation, you know, I showed you the ADIS, you know, the deal with respect to ADIS. Basically, what we've said is that you're responsible for maintaining them. If the homeowner doesn't want you to maintain them and doesn't give you access to their property, then I don't know how they can come back and sue you at a later date to maintain their lift station, you know, their grinder pump, if they deny you access. Now, whether you have, I mean, think about it. Demco's got a meter on the side of your house, but there's no servitude for you to walk to that meter. There's no servitude on your property to get to that meter. There's no servitude. I mean, there's an underground line that goes to it, or maybe overhead line, but there's no servitude to access that meter. But Demco walks on your property at least once a month to read that meter. And if there's a problem with the line between the transformer and your house, Demco's gonna come service that without a servitude. So I don't know why you need a servitude to work on a sewer line, but you don't need a servitude to work on an electric line. Who locates the servitude? You know, we gotta establish that you need a servitude, because you are a utility. I'm just gonna tell you the question. You act like we hadn't thought about this. We've tried to address all these questions over a 2-year period, and nobody from the Dewars District showed up until we had a law in place. Where are the pumps? I don't know where they are. You know where the sewer lines are that drain into, theoretically you ought to know, because you accepted them at some point in time when the subdivision was designed. So those houses that tie into that line all have sewer pumps. You know, and where's the cost? The individuals have been paying every month. Now, look, people don't want to hear this, but utilities are as close a form to socialism as we have in this country. Amen. In the fact that it doesn't necessarily cost you the same thing for Demco to deliver power that it costs to deliver at my house. However, you and I pay the same rate. So what I'm saying is that, you know, there's these co-op utilities, all these other utilities, the city of Walker that has lift stations currently, that the city uses public funds to repair somebody's sewer grinder pump that's within the city limits of Walker, and some that are with outside the city limits of Walker that they service. I mean, this isn't like we came up with some new idea that has never been done before. And so, you know, I'm not gonna say that there aren't some issues so far as liability. However, this is a low pressure system. So it's no different than if your septic tank backs up or anything else. And if there's no power, there's no expectation that you've got to provide that service. So, look, my house flooded. I wasn't expecting anybody to do anything until, you know, because there's a natural disaster and stuff like that happens. I think that there are a bunch of valid questions that we need to address about concern about whatever, but to suspend the ordinance when we worked on it for 2 years without anybody showing any care or concern for how it came out, and then all of a sudden when we pass one, everybody wants to know what we're doing. So I think if you want to work forward and try to solve these issues, we're more than welcome. But I have yet to determine how we have created an ordinance that puts y'all at a tremendous risk. That's just, I mean, to answer the questions you said, that's how I feel about it. So, you know, we've talked about all the issues over a period of time. So to imply that we didn't discuss it, you know, or not necessarily you at that point in time, but there have been some implications through letters written that we just came up with this thing out of the blue. and that we didn't let people proper
I think
notification.
it said within 20 seconds, we voted and moved on.
Well, you know, when you discuss something for a long time and you hash it out, you kind of figure it out. So
Okay.
that's what I got. Shane, you got something to say?
It's a lot of very valid points. I think Mr. Blaine mentioned, and you also mentioned, Gary, and I know that you have a lot of knowledge about this, but, you know, I think we would all agree that this ordinance needs a lot of clarification in order to allow the sewer companies, you know, the ability to maintain and establish ownership and where the ownership is established. And like you said, I mean, I'm like you, I don't really think we need servitudes, but I think we do need to allow for ownership. And so I personally don't think that it would be too much to ask to suspend this for say 90 days to you know, allow this committee and the ordinance committee to work together to try to get this right. You know, I think that there's a lot of valid questions. We make this retroactive, and I think there does need to be a standard. I think that whatever grinder pump exists, it needs to be brought up to that standard. And then if the property owner agrees and the sewer company agrees, then the sewer company does take it over and maintain it. I do think that it was a good recommendation that you had to allow these sewer companies maintain these, because they're the specialists and they know more about maintaining sewer pumps and lift stations and drainage lines than anybody else, you know. But I do think that it wouldn't be the end of the world if we could suspend this for, you know, a specific amount of time and give everybody the opportunity to provide input and help us get this ordinance right. I mean,
You know, look, I
let's
understand.
talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Here's my concern. I'm just gonna tell you what my concern. This is, we've been trying to take care of people. We've been trying to take care of our
agree.
constituents,
I agree.
right? Okay, so think about it. We tried initially to go through the realtors and to get part of the notification. We didn't want the sewer district to maintain anything. We just wanted to tell people what they were buying. Because ultimately, if you go buy a house and I'm not picking on anybody, I'm just gonna use this as, if you go and buy a house in Serene Acres, when it says sewer, it says City of Denham Springs. It doesn't tell you that you got a grinder pump that you gotta maintain that's pumping through an 1.5 or 2 inch line under a canal or over a canal to a lift station that's, you know, a quarter mile away or whatever. It tells you that you are tied to the City of Denham Springs sewer. And only when your toilet doesn't flush do you realize you have a grinder pump. So our initial thing was to try to have the realtors help us. Well, they didn't want to do it, that got rejected. So we taking care of the realtors, but we're not taking care of our citizens that have grinder pumps. Those people are still out there. And so then we tried, you know, we tried several different tacks, several different things. And ultimately what we came up with is those individuals are paying for sewer. You know, I pay for sewer, you don't, you got whatever. But, and you probably got a Monad too or something, or do you have sewer?
No, you got an individual
Yeah,
system.
you got an individual system. But ultimately, you know, because of the way things done, most people pay for sewer, they go into some gravity line that transfers to some lift station that's pumped to some sewer treatment plant. And all they do is pay that fee every month. And the sewer district's responsible for that lift station and for the treating of that sewer. Except if you live with a grinder pump and you pay the same fee that the guy has who has no headaches, except you're responsible for this pump. And that pump, you're paying for the power that the lift station, that Joe Blow, who's got a lift station that's, you know, tied in a gravity line close to a lift station, that the sewer district pays electricity on. And when you start grinding that stuff and pumping it, you're technically pre-treating the sewer. You know, when you start chopping up, you kind of pre-treating it for the sewer district. So not only are we pre-treating their sewer and pumping it to them, we're paying the same thing and having to pay for the electricity and the pre-treatment. With nothing back except that when it breaks, we gotta replace it. Everybody wants to talking about bringing it up to standard. I think what you gotta realize, at some point in time, the sewer district accepted those things into the system. When somebody built a new house and paid and and started paying their sewer fee, the sewer system said, okay, good, you got a grinder pump, pump it us. If they chose not to go inspect it, that was their business. But they basically allowed somebody to put something in the ground and start pumping it to them. You know, I know for a fact that there were certain individuals in Serene Acres that bought what the recommendation of the manager of the city of Denver Springs Sewer District told them to buy. So they probably started off at the right standard. And then it broke and they bought a cheaper one, and it broke and bought a cheaper one, but usually everybody started off at a proper standard to begin with. So the sewer district's been collecting the money every month from the customer. They've been replacing it. Maybe they put a cheap pump the second time and the third time and the fourth time. But the sewer district's been pocketing that money without any responsibility. And so consequently, so far as bringing it back to standard, they can bring it back up to standard. Now, I know that the city of Addis, as a policy, gives a credit on electricity and then charges an extra $20 a month as a maintenance fee on the grinder pump. Am I correct, Wayne? I sent you that ordinance. I don't have it in front of me.
And I looked at it and just didn't have time to study it in detail, but they did have some procedures. But I don't know if I saw anything about the retroactivity of the old ones. I think most of those were referring to the new pumps.
Well, I think they created a standard about which to
There are some standards
to
in there.
tie them into, and ultimately, you know,
Can you see that?
this is, what is this? This is Addis's definition of utility. Ultimately, you know, from a parish point of view, we looked at outline grinder pumps, and we had engineers come in and tell us there are times that grinder pumps are the thing to do. You know what I'm saying? That's the standard. That's what you ought to utilize in certain situations. So we chose not to do that. But ultimately, the sewer district needs to determine what the standard is. I mean, ultimately, you review every set of plans that's on anything, any subdivision that's being built. And you don't let individuals typically put grinder pumps at their house and tie to you. Go ahead.
I would defer some of this to the engineers, but it was my understanding from the meeting that people do put in grinder pumps without telling the sewer district.
Okay, so here's the deal. If I mean, think about it. If I'm coming, when I go to build a house, when I look at a lot, I'm looking for one or two things. Is there a gravity line in front of me? And if there's not a gravity line, you know, if there's a pressure line, that 300-foot law doesn't apply. Meaning that, you know, I mean, typically there's got to be a gravity line for me to tie to. If there's a gravity line, I don't need a grinder pump. You know, so in essence, there's really, I don't know why you would put a grinder pump in to tie to a sewer system that the sewer system didn't know you were doing that. I mean,
I think additions is what the engineers were talking about. If you do addition to your house, you may put a grinder pump in to connect it in to do that wouldn't end with the original system or something like that. But I would defer all that to the engineers.
I mean, what,
That ain't your
and
part.
don't get me wrong, what I'm telling you is that we're talking about it, and I'm not saying that the ordinance doesn't need some work, because I think that there definitely needs to be something about liability, because ultimately, you're responsible, what we're asking you to do is maintain the pump, just like you would maintain the lift station. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, and if we need to do it, I mean, think about it. If I'm a developer, I put the lift station in, then I donate it to you. So, I can't speak for everybody, but those 10 or 11 residents of Serene Acres, if the city of Denham asked them for a donation of their grinder pump, I guarantee you every homeowner is signing that grinder pump over. Every one of them. You know, because ultimately, if they don't, the next time it quits working, they either got to call a maintenance guy or they got to go out and dig the top off of it and, you know, get out in it. And it ain't nothing nice about working in it when it's broken, because you. So I mean, I'm just saying that, I'm not saying that there aren't some issues. I just don't think that there's anything that cannot be worked through. And what I don't, and my concern with you, Shane, is that we have had people come to us and talk to us about their problems for a couple years. And now we're going to tell you, well, guess what? We're going to suspend this. And if you're grinder pump goes out in the 90 days, next 90 days, you another $1,000 in the hole. And so, or $3,000, whatever the deal is. And so consequently, you know, these districts operate within our parish. And I feel, at the time that this ordinance was passed, I think everybody on this council felt that the sewer districts or the operators of utilities were in way better position to address the grinder pump issue than the individual home.
And I think we all still feel that way. I think Mr. Honeycutt would agree that, you know, in the end, that this will wind up being a good ordinance, you know, what's best for the people, you know, but I do think that we need to take a step back and get it right before we just totally implement it, you know, because I think there's some major concerns here. You know, one is ownership. You know, you say you can guarantee that every individual in Livingston Parish would like to sign their grinder pump over, but it could be some that may not, you know, and they should have that choice.
And if
they should have that choice.
If they don't want to sign it over, we need to put we need. I'm not saying the ordinance is perfect. I'm saying we could easily amend the ordinance and said, you don't want to donate the grinder pump or sign access to the sewer district, you out the maintenance program.
And the truth is, you're right. You know, I mean, but to me, you know, we did work on this for 2 years. It was the last part of us working on this. When we started thinking about it, I think you recommended that the sewer companies take over the grinder pumps. You know, that was probably the last 3 or 4 months we talked about it and went back and forth and that. But I mean, we've been doing this for 2 years. I think if we suspended it for just 90 days in an effort to try to work with the sewer district companies and the people of Livingston Parish to try to enhance this so that it works for all and it's what's best for all. I mean, you think that would be all right? I mean, to me, you all know that we got major problems, and that even if it's in place right now today, these sewer companies are not going to run out there and just start specking out all new grinder pumps and start buying all new grinder pumps and installing all things, because it's just not something that's possible. So to me, we could go in, we could clarify some things, you know, on when to establish ownerships and where to draw the line, and make it benefit for all.
Shane, we talked about this for 2 years, and we had nobody from the sewer districts come. And we passed the ordinance, and all of a sudden, everybody wants to come to the table and be part of the committee. So I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm all in favor of putting a committee together.
Me too.
To sit down, some people from the sewer district, people from the council, and working this deal out. And I'm not against some private citizens who brought the concern to us initially of who dealt with the issues to be on the committee. What I'm not in favor of doing is telling the citizens we're more interested in helping the
Nobody is saying that yet.
Well, if we suspend it, then that's what we're telling them.
That's
that
not true. If we suspend it, we are recognizing that we have serious issues with our original intent, and we need to work to try to get this right so that it's legal and it can be a useful document. I mean, to me, it's almost like it's not really a usable document. No,
You didn't vote for
I wouldn't hear that day.
it. That's the only reason you didn't vote for it. Okay, right now, what Gary just said is that once we got it in place, then people wanted to start talking. If we get rid of it, what's gonna make sure that people still won't start talking?
Well, you can put a deadline on the suspension, and you've
all
got a
that's good.
committee right here
If we
saying
leave
it.
it in place, form a committee immediately and start working on it, this shouldn't take forever. It should take a few months at the most,
Well, that's why I said 90 days.
and that's fine. We're gonna do it without the suspending it.
I mean, I think that, look, I think we need to put an item on the agenda and let the council as a whole, look, Shane, you're not gonna get a favorable recommendation. You're not even gonna get a second to suspend it tonight out of here. So let's just put an item on the agenda and let the council as a whole figure out if they wanna suspend it or leave it in place, but we ought to set a committee up. I'm not gonna send a recommendation out of this committee, you know, with only 3 of us here. I think that we need to put an item on the agenda in 2 weeks, Blaine.
I just did want to recognize the
Yeah, we-
attorney.
Oh, yeah,
we-
we're
we-
not, if she wants to speak.
I didn't know if she
she
wanted, I didn't want to
Oh,
hold
yeah,
on.
we need to hear from her too.
But I mean, I'm serious, I'm interested in what some of the concerns of the city of Denham, if they're different than some of the concerns that you expressed.
And we appreciate that, because that's gonna help us get it in a better place than it is now.
It definitely needs to work.
Oh, yeah, we know.
Hey, I'm Stephanie Hewlett. I represent the city of Denham Springs. I'm happy to assist in whatever way I can on a committee. I've worked for the city and represented them for 5 years, and the city's involvement has never been asked for. Certainly for the last 2 years, I've been available to come at any point and speak to y'all about how this would impact the city or the city sewer system, but that's never been invited. It's never been, told to us that you're working on it. I do agree with Blaine and with Chris Moody, your parish council attorney, that this is unconstitutional. I do agree with Mr. Mack that I think it does need to be suspended, and the reason that I would recommend that is not necessarily just your liability, but if a pump goes out without this ordinance being suspended, the homeowners would then go to the sewer system, and the homeowners would say, you need to replace my pump. The sewer system, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's certainly the city sewer system, I think the parish as well, would say, we can't do that because this ordinance is unconstitutional as it is written, and we will be in a world of trouble if we spend public funds to redo your pump with an unconstitutional ordinance. We simply cannot do that. And so what that does is that ends us up in litigation. And so now your homeowners are not only paying for a grinder pump, they're paying to litigate the issue about the grinder pump as well. That could be resolved if you would simply suspend the ordinance, like Mr. Mack says. There's a host of other issues that the city sees with this, but I think those are better addressed in a committee.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Public funds. Define public funds.
Taxpayer dollars.
Okay, so is the sewer system underwritten by the tax revenue within the city of Denham, or is it self-sustained?
I would be lying if I told you I knew
Okay,
the answer to that
But
question.
if it was self-sustained and required no tax dollars, would it require any public funds?
It's still public funds. It's still a public system that is receiving funds to operate a public system. And I'm not gonna pretend to know all the ins and outs of sewer. I was raised right across from Serene Acres. I grew up on Wax Road. Lived in that little house that has all the stuff out in front of it now, the second one, 26241 Wax Road. That's where I grew up. So I'm very familiar with the area. We were on we had a MODAC system there. And I was in, I remember my dad being out there digging in it and covered in God knows what, and I do understand the frustrations with it. But I also understand that you're gonna be more frustrated
Okay,
if you come to us thinking that you have a good ordinance and we say that we can't do it, and now you're paying for an attorney on top of a grinder pump, you're gonna be more frustrated with me then.
okay, okay, let's address the council, but, so, when, in part of the thing when Chris was talking to us, when we talked about a public utility versus a private for-profit utility, and so he realized the Public Service Commission wasn't involved anymore, so, he was concerned that we had some, but his initial response to this was fine. Now, since then, I think since then he's had a difference of opinion, but, I mean, I'm still concerned, I still am somewhat concerned about the public fund versus tax dollar situation, because, the Livingston Parish Sewer District received no revenue from the parish. It's all self-generated money that.
It's so equated out, judicial,
Public entity?
We have to follow public good laws and do all that stuff. And trust me, I sat with Chris did for years. A lot of times you make an initial decision, you go back and you think about it, and then, you want to adjust it a little bit.
I understand. So,
We're to work with y'all, but just as it stands, we think it's unconstitutional.
I got you. So, I mean, we're gonna meet on, what day do we meet next month? The 8th?
Is next Thursday.
Okay, so we're gonna meet the 8th. Why don't, I'd invite both of y'all to come back and talk to the council as a whole and tell us about your concerns. And, maybe you're not gonna, all 9 of us are as hard-headed as Scooter and I, and we're gonna you'll have a different opinion. And I think Chris, and I think you bring it,
Yeah.
you know, bring the engineer from the sewer district, bring the engineer from the city, you know, I think they might be the same engineer. AFA's doing both of them, both of you. You know, bring Eddie or whoever's coming and talk to us about it. You know, Chris will be here to make public comment. I think that, or give us his 2 cents. I think that we understand that the work needs to be done. I just don't think the work is that hard I don't think it's that hard to come to a resolution. And I'm not sure that it's something that requires suspending the ordinance for, you know, a period of time, but, you know, we'll have recommendation from our attorney at that point in time, and, you know, if he says we need to do it, then that'll be a different situation, but, I mean, my only thought process in this whole deal is that, you know, referring to the letter that was sent, you know, by the mayor, it talked about, you know, the homeowner association was gonna maintain it. Guess what? That developer contracted with the city and
That's incorrect information. That
Okay, so-
developer contracted with the Department of Health and Hospitals. It had nothing to do with the
To
city.
me, that's all irrelevant.
well,
to
I
me,
mean,
we
I'm just
need to
saying,
put a
but there is
document
no
together that
HOA.
can
There
be
is no HOA. I
utilized.
mean, they create a situation that they said some entity that doesn't exist was gonna maintain them. So I'm just not sure how all that's gonna work at that point in time. And I might have misread the letter, or maybe the letter was misstated. I don't know, but, you know, I guess my situation is that, you know, and I'm sure the city will talk about it in the committee if they have some different concerns, you know, over and above this. I don't think we're trying to tell them that they have to do anything within their, you know, purview. I mean, they've got a defined border, and we've not asked them to do anything within their border.
I think that's where we reach a disagreement about.
Well, I mean,
this.
so, but Serene Acres is well within Livingston Parish. It is not within the city limits of Denham
It
Springs.
is correct, but that does not mean that the parish council can make ordinances that govern city property. There's an attorney general's opinion that says that when city property, which is the sewer system, lies outside of the city limits, the city council is the proper party to make the ordinances that affect that.
Okay, well, and you know, that might be the case. I know that I was told by the city of Walker, there's an opinion that talked about, you know, that grinder pumps need to be maintained by the sewer district, and we're looking to find that, so.
Any information gets it to us.
Yeah,
So,
I
anyway.
would love
But
to see that.
we'll see y'all, we'll be on the agenda, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the 8th.
Yeah.
Come on up.
Thank you.
We did meet 2 years ago. Remember that? You were in the meeting. Probably had it on recorder. So basically, nobody knows what the hell they're talking about. The engineers didn't know in the meeting that she was in. She doesn't even remember me. They don't care about regular citizens. They didn't follow anything on that state paperwork. Nothing was done correctly. And then the engineers didn't even submit the final paperwork. So,
I'll make this real quick.
Go ahead, John.
I met with the sewer district this morning. I met with, City of Denham and some engineers as well. And I don't think it's the intent of the sewer districts or the city of Denham Springs to really put a burden and not work this problem out. They really want to get to the end of this. And on the other hand, I don't think you're there to really try to shaft the sewer districts either. I don't believe that you're there trying to put a hardship on them. I think we could work something out here, just the things like the retroactive being brought in, and then the question of whether the legality of transfer. So I guess I said all that to say this: I'd like to make this request, if Miss Angie and Lauren would accept this as my official request, to put this on Thursday night's agenda for October the 8th, I believe it is, to discuss and take action regarding grinder pumps if necessary. And I guess
Okay.
if that's
That's
good.
what we're gonna do. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
All right.
Good seeing everybody.
Wait, I can't believe.
You're leaving. That's all. So now we're gonna talk about litter.
Yeah, so.
Okay, item 2 on the agenda is, or 4B. Hey, y'all wanna go outside and talk, please? 4B, discussion of section 50-13 littering. Did we get anything about, did we figure out if we need to amend this thing to have specifically say that constables,
Yes, we do need to do some amendments because some of the state laws cannot be backtracked, like some of the, acts that they
Keep talking about it.
say, and then this revised statute don't match up with what this is, so
I take it y'all hadn't done that yet?
we have been working.
Working, okay, I tell you, so since we now know what our concern was and y'all have a thing, y'all think y'all have a final next Tuesday?
They were supposed to. Yeah, neither one of them.
They didn't come.
I told them that we were gonna just really go over the ordinance and see if we needed to make changes. We know that we need to make changes on the constable and
And y'all say that some of the revised statutes aren't correct, so y'all gonna see some amendment on that. Okay, so why don't, and before we have, I mean, we all know what we wanna do, basically. I think, Shane, do you agree with
We
it?
wanna stop littering for sure.
Right, so,
So,
and we
yeah.
wanna let constables and JPs handle it as much as possible. That doesn't mean the sheriff,
To
that
clear
doesn't
up
mean
the
the
court
sheriff can't
system,
do
so
it.
that ain't in there. They haven't been taking much initiative to do much about littering, because
I need to do a little more research
what
on
I was
that
told
one.
That's
is
fine,
that
but so
the
we're
court
gonna-
system don't wanna have to deal with it. So if we can do JP court, and people, like I said the other night, you get a $200 fine for throwing a beer bottle out your car, you ain't gonna throw it out the next time.
So I'd like to charge y'all with trying to next Tuesday, have maybe something close to final and get it to Chris, and so he can review it to make sure that we're in compliance. And maybe we won't give it to him off the cuff, so we don't have to backtrack at a later date.
We've also ran into the issue of, not having the correct contact information for constables and JOPs. Even the Secretary of State doesn't have the correct, like, you can't get a hold of them, so if y'all have that information, just send it to us.
You know,
I
look,
think
I
all
mean,
of
I
that
think
stuff is on the website from where they qualified to run.
It's not,
if you will reach out to Miss Day, Aaron at the AG's office, you know Miss Day. She deals with those. She's responsible for their training, so she probably has an accurate list of the current
That would help
JPs
everybody.
and constables within the parish.
And
to
some
be-
of those may be changing November 3rd.
Yeah, and
You know?
but to be perfectly honest with you, there's gonna be constables that don't wanna address this.
I mean, that's fine.
And so the question we need to look at is, are we gonna let, I mean, constables have a current jurisdictional line, and JPs have a current whatever.
They
So
gotta work within their district.
yes, to work within a district, so
I got some
there's gonna be,
information on that.
there's some areas that might not be covered if those people don't wanna do it. So we need to ask maybe the Attorney General's office, when you talk to Ms. Day about such stuff, what's the possibility of a JP going outside another area? I don't know if that's legal, they can give you that information.
When I talked to, Jeff Setchy the other day, he said he does wanna talk about that because it does say in the current state statutes that in litter court, they can service the entire parish.
Well, you
So we
can,
wanna make sure that that's what that
you
says.
can ask about that question also.
You know, cause let's say if somebody down in Marpole doesn't wanna hold a litter court, well, we'll send them to Live Oak to that justice of peace litter court.
So,
Ain't a problem.
I don't know if that's, but we know what we're trying to do, so if y'all can work to that or toward that, it would be grateful.
Yeah.
If you could have that next Tuesday. Is there anything else we need to discuss tonight? Is there anything else? Let's see, so we dealt with other business, no other business? Somebody wanna make a motion to adjourn?
No, it's too early.
Okay.
Yeah,
make a
I-
motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion by Shane, second by Scooter. Any objection? None?
I'm gonna go home, me and the wife's gonna work on this too.